As we journey through our later years, there are certain truths that become harder to ignore, truths that perhaps no one else has the courage to tell us. Today, I want to share 7 pieces of honest, sometimes difficult advice that could transform how you approach this chapter of your life. These aren't sugar-coated platitudes or empty reassurances. Instead, they're real, practical insights that come from years of observing what truly makes the difference between those who thrive in their golden years and those who merely survive. If you've been feeling stuck, frustrated, or unsure about how to navigate the complexities of aging, this conversation is for you. We're going to tackle some uncomfortable topics, challenge some assumptions, and hopefully provide you with the clarity you need to make the most of the precious time ahead. So settle in, keep an open mind, and let's explore these 7 life-changing pieces of wisdom together. Advice 1. Your health is your greatest wealth. Let me tell you about Margaret Thompson from Portland, Oregon, at 72. Margaret was the kind of woman who believed that taking medications was a sign of weakness. She'd raised 4 children, run a successful bakery for 30 years, and prided herself on her independence. But Margaret had been ignoring the warning signs her body had been sending for months. The shortness of breath when climbing stairs, the chest tightness during her morning walks, the fatigue that seemed to linger no matter how much she rested. Her children had been gently suggesting she see a doctor, but Margaret brushed off their concerns. "I've made it this far without fussing over every little ache and pain," she would say. It wasn't until she collapsed while tending to her garden that reality hit hard. The heart attack that followed could have been prevented with proper medical attention and lifestyle changes. Here's the tough truth that Margaret learned the hard way. Your health truly is your greatest wealth, especially in your later years. Every day you postpone taking care of your body is a day you're gambling with your future quality of life. The small inconveniences of regular checkups, screenings, and yes, even taking prescribed medications, pale in comparison to the devastating consequences of neglect. This isn't about becoming a hypochondriac or living in fear. It's about being proactive and realistic. Your body has served you faithfully for decades, but it needs more attention now, not less. Regular exercise doesn't have to mean running marathons. A 30-minute walk, some gentle stretching, or even chair exercises can make a tremendous difference. Eating well doesn't require a complete diet overhaul, but it does mean being mindful of what fuels your body. The harsh reality is that health problems compound as we age. What might have been a minor issue in your 40s can become a major limitation in your 70s. But here's the empowering part. You still have significant control over how this story unfolds. Every healthy choice you make today is an investment in tomorrow's possibilities. Advice 2. Isolation is your enemy. Robert Jenkins had lived in the same house in Minneapolis, Minnesota for 45 years. After his wife Eleanor passed away 3 years ago, he found himself increasingly withdrawn from the world. The invitations to neighborhood gatherings went unanswered. The weekly coffee dates with old friends were declined, and even calls from his daughter Sarah in California became shorter and less frequent. Robert convinced himself that he was content with his solitude. He had his books, his television programs, and his memories. But what he didn't realize was how profoundly isolation was affecting not just his mood, but his cognitive function and overall health. Studies show that loneliness can be as harmful to your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. The tough advice here is this. You must actively fight against isolation, even when it feels easier to withdraw. Losing a spouse, watching friends move away or pass on, dealing with mobility issues. These are all real challenges that can make social connection feel difficult or even painful. But isolation becomes a downward spiral that's increasingly hard to escape the longer you remain in it. Human connection doesn't just happen anymore at this stage of life. You have to be intentional about creating and maintaining it. This might mean joining a senior center, volunteering for a cause you care about, or even just making it a point to have a real conversation with the cashier at the grocery store. It might mean learning to use technology to video chat with grandchildren or joining online communities of people who share your interests. I know it can feel vulnerable to put yourself out there, especially if you've experienced loss or if physical limitations make socializing more challenging. But the alternative, a life lived in increasing isolation, robs you of one of the most fundamental human needs and accelerates both physical and cognitive decline. Advice 3, your time is finite. Use it wisely. Dorothy Martinez of Phoenix, Arizona spent the first 2 years of her retirement waiting for the grandchildren to visit more often, waiting for her health to improve so she could travel, waiting for the right time to start that pottery class she'd always dreamed about. At 75, Dorothy had fallen into the trap that catches many retirees, treating retirement as an endless expanse of time rather than recognizing it as a precious, limited resource. It was only when her longtime neighbor and dear friend, Helen, was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer that Dorothy realized the harsh truth. None of us know how much time we have left, and waiting for perfect conditions is a luxury we can't afford. This piece of advice might sting, but it's essential. Stop waiting for someday. Someday is not guaranteed. If there's something you've always wanted to do, learn, or experience, the time to start is now. Not when conditions are perfect, not when you feel completely ready, but now. This doesn't mean being reckless or ignoring legitimate constraints like health or finances. It means being honest about what's a real obstacle and what's just fear or procrastination dressed up as practicality. Can't afford that European tour? Maybe a local historical site you've never visited could scratch that same itch for exploration. Worried you're too old to learn a new skill? Remember that every expert was once a beginner, and the satisfaction of learning something new might be exactly what your spirit needs. The time you have left is not infinite, but it's also not insignificant. 10 years, 20 years, even 5 years can hold incredible experiences, meaningful relationships, and personal growth if you approach them with intention rather than passivity. Advice 4, your family owes you nothing. This might be the most difficult advice to accept, but it's crucial for your peace of mind and relationships. William Patterson from Charleston, South Carolina, had very specific expectations about how his retirement would look. After working for 35 years as an engineer and raising 3 children, William assumed his kids would naturally want to spend significant time with him, would seek his advice regularly, and would make him a central part of their busy lives. When his oldest son, Michael, moved to Seattle for a job opportunity, William felt betrayed. When his daughter, Jennifer, seemed more interested in her own children's activities than in lengthy phone calls with Dad, William became resentful. He began keeping score of who called whom, who visited, and who remembered birthdays without reminders. The tough truth is this: your children have their own lives, their own challenges, and their own priorities. They love you, but they don't owe you their time, attention, or decision-making in the way you might expect. This isn't a reflection of failure on your part as a parent or a sign that they don't care. It's simply the natural progression of life. This realization can be liberating once you accept it. Instead of feeling entitled to your family's time and attention, you can appreciate whatever they do, give as a gift rather than an obligation. Instead of keeping score, you can focus on being the kind of person others want to spend time with, interested in their lives, supportive without being intrusive, and emotionally self-sufficient. This doesn't mean becoming isolated from family or not expressing your needs. It means adjusting your expectations to align with reality and finding fulfillment that doesn't depend primarily on what others do for you. Advice 5, embrace technology or get left behind. Elizabeth Wong from San Francisco, California, was 68 when her grandson Tommy tried to teach her how to use an iPad. Elizabeth's immediate response was, "I've lived this long without these gadgets. I don't need them now." For years, she watched as more and more aspects of daily life moved online. Banking, shopping, communication with family, Even her doctor's office began requiring online appointment scheduling. What Elizabeth didn't anticipate was how rapidly the world would change, especially during the pandemic years when digital connection became not just convenient, but essential. While her friends who had embraced technology were video calling grandchildren, ordering groceries online, and staying connected with their communities, Elizabeth found herself increasingly cut off from the world around her. Here's the tough advice. You must make peace with technology, not because it's inherently good or bad, but because it has become the language of the modern world. Refusing to learn basic digital skills is like refusing to learn English in an English-speaking country. You can survive, but you'll be unnecessarily limited. You don't need to become a tech expert, but you do need to master the basics: how to make video calls to stay connected with family, how to access basic online services, and how to use your smartphone beyond just phone calls. These skills aren't just convenient, they're increasingly necessary for independence. The learning curve might feel steep, but remember that you've mastered countless new technologies throughout your life. You learned to drive a car, operate household appliances, and adapt to changes in everything from television to banking. This is just the next adaptation in a lifetime of adaptations. Advice 6. Stop living in the past. George Harrison, not the Beatle but a retired teacher from Dallas, Texas, spent most conversations talking about how much better things used to be. Schools were better when he was teaching in the 70s and 80s. Music was better in his youth. People were more respectful, neighborhoods were safer, and life in general was simply superior to the modern world. George's constant dwelling on the good old days wasn't just annoying to his listeners. It was robbing him of the ability to find joy and meaning in the present. When you're constantly measuring today against a romanticized version of yesterday, today will always fall short. This tough advice isn't about forgetting your past or dismissing your experiences. Your memories and the wisdom you've gained are valuable. But when nostalgia becomes a prison that prevents you from engaging with the present, it becomes destructive rather than comforting. The world has changed, and not all changes have been positive. But dwelling on what's been lost prevents you from seeing what might be gained. Every generation faces unique challenges and opportunities. Your role isn't to be a museum curator of the past, but to be a wise elder who can appreciate both what was and what is. This shift in perspective can open up new possibilities for connection and growth. Instead of being the person who always talks about how much better things used to be, you can be someone who shares wisdom while remaining curious about the present and future. If you're finding value in this honest conversation, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you struggled with any of these challenges yourself? Advice 7. Plan for your decline. Perhaps the most difficult advice of all is this: you must plan for your physical and cognitive decline while you're still capable of making clear decisions. Martha Stewart, no, not the celebrity, but a retired nurse from Boston, Massachusetts, watched her father struggle with Alzheimer's disease. She saw how unprepared her family was for the difficult decisions that had to be made about his care, his finances, and his living situation. Despite this experience, Martha put off having conversations with her own children about her wishes. She avoided creating a comprehensive will, didn't establish power of attorney documents, and never discussed her preferences for end-of-life care. Like many of us, she found it easier to focus on staying healthy and active rather than preparing for the possibility that she might not always be able to make decisions for herself. The tough truth is this: hoping for the best while failing to prepare for other possibilities is not kindness to yourself or your loved ones. It's denial that can create unnecessary suffering and conflict later. Planning for decline doesn't mean being morbid or giving up on living fully. It means being responsible and loving toward your future self and your family. This includes having frank conversations about your wishes, creating legal documents while you're competent to do so, and making decisions about things like long-term care insurance and living arrangements before you're forced into crisis mode. It also means being realistic about changes in your abilities and making adaptations proactively rather than reactively. This might mean learning to accept help, modifying your living space for safety, or having backup plans for transportation when driving is no longer safe. These 7 pieces of advice aren't meant to discourage you or paint a bleak picture of aging. Instead, they're meant to empower you with the truth you need to make informed decisions about how you want to live these precious years. The people who age most successfully aren't those who avoid difficult realities, but those who face them head-on and make conscious choices about how to respond. Your later years can be filled with meaning, connection, and even adventure, but only if you're willing to be honest about both the challenges and opportunities this stage of life presents. Take care of your health, maintain your connections, use your time intentionally, adjust your expectations, embrace necessary changes, live in the present, and plan wisely for the future. Remember, aging isn't something that happens to you, it's something you participate in. The choices you make today will shape the story of your later years. Make them count. Be brave enough to face the truth, and wise enough to act on it. If this resonates with you, please like this video and share it with someone who might benefit from these insights. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more honest conversations about navigating life's later chapters. Your future self will thank you for the wisdom you choose to embrace today.